The Senate Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Daley.
Here.
Senator Ellison. Present. Senator Krasner. Here. Senator Neal. Here. Senator Orenshaw.
Here.
Chair Flores.
Present. Please let the record reflect all members are present. Can we give Senator Neal a big round of applause and welcome her back? So that absolutely means we have a quorum. And before we get into our very special edition of Government Affairs After Dark, we do have a small gift for Senator Neal to welcome her back. It's random enough to make her feel uncomfortable and laugh. And we just wanted to say welcome back.
Oh my, it is random enough to make me feel uncomfortable.
It is a pair of her very own boots. Senator Neal is back, and we are incredibly happy to see her here. But if she's going to be stomping around this building again and putting everybody in their place, I think she needed to do it with the right attire. And so with that, welcome, Neal, Senator Neal back. Very quickly, just want to give everybody a run of the show. I want to remind everybody, as always, we're going to limit all testimony and support opposition neutral to 2 minutes. I also want to remind folk that you are always authorized to say ditto, I agree. That is perfectly acceptable. You can let the folk you represent know. You can let the folk in your community know. You can let all the family members know that you were here, you were present, and we know your position. You don't have to feel obligated to come back and say the same exact thing 14 different times. I promise you, we've heard it. I also want to give everybody a run of the show. On the agenda, there are 7 items. Those 7 items, we do not intend to hear all 7 of those items. I wanted to start off with Senate Bill 65. We will not be hearing Senate Bill 65. I personally was involved in trying to draft an amendment that got all the stakeholders in the right place, and I misunderstood some of our stakeholders specifically, and I wanted to make it clear that transparency was the intent. We did not get to the transparency intent, and therefore the bill is not ready and unfortunately will not be heard. Similarly, with my personal bill, Senate Bill 289, it is a repeat of a bill that I carried last session. I've been working closely with the committee members, and I also worked very closely with the Land Chamber of Commerce, Peter Guzman, for the last couple of weeks, and we've been trying to find middle ground. We have agreed to take this to the interim, collectively work with different partners and the committee members, and address affordable housing. It is an absolutely important, critical conversation that we must have, but we believe that we can do it through a different approach and then let this simmer for another session. So with that, both of those hearings will not be heard. And also for those of you who unfortunately we were not able to give a hearing to, who reached out last minute, just know that I've killed my own bill in the interest of trying to move forward legislation that has the support of the committee and can continue to be worked on throughout the session. So with that, we're going to go ahead and hear Senate Bill 443, followed by Senate Bill 402, followed by Senate Bill 373, then Senate Bill 72, and then lastly Senate Bill 48. With that, we'll open up the hearing on Senate Bill 443. Madam Majority Leader, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and all of the members of the Senate Government Affairs Committee. I certainly do hope that today I will also be put in my place by our very own Senator Neal, who I'm also very excited to have back, and thrilled to be here presenting to you all along with Senator Neal as part of the committee, because I have been here a few times with you all. I am Nicole Canizaro. I proudly represent the 6th District of Nevada Senate in the northwest portion of the Las Vegas Valley, and I serve as your majority leader here in the Nevada State Senate. I am very pleased today to be presenting to you Senate Bill 443, and I am joined by Nick Vasiliadis, who I would love to pass this presentation on to once I have done a brief overview of the bill, and then we'd love to take any questions that you or the committee members may have, of which I think there probably are many. So what Senate Bill 443 is really seeking to do is to make sure that we are emphasizing the importance of fair compensation for workers and ensuring high quality standards in the construction of electric and gas utility projects. The intent here is to make sure that when we are talking about jobs for Nevadans, when we are investing in jobs for Nevada families and working families, that is a job that is paying a good wage, that is providing good benefits, and that they can rely on. And that is sort of the intent behind the language that you see here in Senate Bill 443. With your indulgence, what I would like to do at this point in time, Mr. Chair, is walk through key sections of the bill, along with what you should have in front of you as a conceptual amendment. We will be working from the proposed amendment to Senate Bill 443, so that is the language that I would defer the committee to. And so what I would like to do is just walk through a few of those brief sections so that the committee knows sort of what is included in this bill. So Section 2 of the bill provides a declaration of legislative intent concerning the payment of prevailing wages to workers that are performing construction work on projects awarded by a public utility relating to natural gas infrastructure. Section 3 defines public utility and significant natural gas infrastructure project for the purposes of that section. The section further requires a contractor or subcontractor who is awarded a contract for construction work on a significant natural gas infrastructure project by a public utility to comply with prevailing wage provisions applicable to public works, even if the construction work does not qualify as a public work. Lastly, Section 4 clarifies that the provisions of the bill are not to be applied retroactively. And of course, as I mentioned, there is that conceptual amendment that should be in front of you and available on Nellis. This amendment does revise part of the legislative declaration in Section 2 of the bill, focusing on significant infrastructure that is in the public interest and will help maintain a highly trained and skilled local workforce in Nevada. The amendment further revises certain definitions in Section 3 and focuses the provisions of the bill on significant operational or capital requirements of natural gas or electric utilities. Lastly, the amendment clarifies that the provisions of the bill do not apply in situations where the primary construction work is performed pursuant to a collective bargaining agreement, worksite agreement, or project labor agreement. And we do have many of those in place for some utility projects already. And so what we are seeking to do is to make sure that we are really taking a holistic approach to some of these projects and making sure that we are delivering jobs for Nevadans here. And so what I would like to do at this point, Mr. Chair, is hand it over to Mr. Vasiliadis on behalf of the Southern Nevada Building Trades for additional information on why this bill is so important.
Chair, members of the committee, Nick Vasiliadis for the record on behalf of the Southern Nevada Building Trades Union. We're excited to be presenting this bill, this amendment to Senate Bill 443 with the majority leader. We think it meets the intended spirit of the law when prevailing wage on public works was first passed by this body. When you see large-scale infrastructure programs, I think we want the best and brightest workers on the job, and that job pays a wage that is livable and allows these same workers to live in the communities in which they're building. We think we've been able to narrowly tailor this to those large-scale infrastructure projects, which was the intent of this bill. And so with that, we would love to answer any questions. I'm sure, as the majority leader indicated, there are many. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you both for the presentation. Members, we'll open it up for questions. Senator Ellison, please.
Apologize. That's the first time I got to look at this. My question is when I looked at this and the statement you just did, 443 is not a public works project, right? This is not a state or federal project. Are you talking any gas construction that are out there? Could you define that for me, please?
No. Thank you for the question, Senator. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Senator Ellison, Nicole Canizaro, Senate District 6. So in the bill, it acknowledges that in fact these projects would not qualify as public works such that they would be subject to our typical requirements for public works projects. Obviously, if they did, the bill would be completely unnecessary because they would already fall within those definitions. And what we are trying to do with this bill and with the conceptual amendment is to ensure that we are providing some of those highly skilled, highly trained, good paying jobs on these projects. This bill does tailor where those provisions would be required for prevailing wage to be paid. And I would direct your attention to section 3, subsection 2B, and 2C, where it defines significant operational or capital requirement of a natural gas utility, and a significant operational or capital requirement of an electric utility. There are definitions there for what sort of projects would be covered under the provisions of this bill. And the intention is really to get at some of these larger scale projects that are being done by our utilities to make sure that we are providing good, high-paying jobs, and that that highly skilled workforce is working on those. And so I think Mr. Faciliades may have some additional comments to add in response to your question, Senator Allison.
Yeah, I just wanted to get on the record that we did work with the utilities to arrive at this language. So it wasn't meant or intended to be an ambush or a sneak attack. We're really trying to fulfill the spirit of the law. And in that sense, Mr. Chair, I do want to point out in section 3, paragraph 2, sub B, there's a typo. Instead of 704-911, it's supposed to be 704-991. I think we can see why that typo was made, but there was that typo that we wanted to clarify on the record.
Members, additional questions? Senator Daly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Majority Leader, Nick. So as you may know, it may be counterintuitive on this, I do not think this is good policy. And I will have a question here. I just am failing to understand with some of the testimony that Mr. Faciliades gave regarding we want to make sure people are paid a good wage, various things. So if it's such good policy, why is it not covering everything? Why is mining not covered? Hospitals aren't covered? Variety of, I could go on, warehouse, whatever it might be. So if it's that good a policy, we should cover everything. And then there are reasons why I don't believe it is good policy for the state, nevertheless. When I get done with my comment, I do have one question, I think, in subsection 4. And maybe there's a question before that. Does Mr. Faciliades, the Majority Leader, have an idea on how and why we have prevailing wage on public work, publicly financed construction, and why it doesn't apply to private? Does anyone have an idea on how we got there?
Thank you for the question, Senator Daly. Nicole Canizaro, Senate District 6. So I am, obviously, I completely understand some of the questioning, and I think, honestly, you might even be able to answer that last question that you just asked probably better and more comprehensively than I can, but I will take a stab at it. So first and foremost, I want to start with, if it is such good policy, why not apply it everywhere? I fundamentally believe that when we are paying people for a job that they are doing, that we should be paying high quality workers the wage that they deserve. I believe that they should have benefits that go along with that job. That said, there is no piece of legislation in this building that is going to fix every issue and solve every problem that we are seeking to solve. I think that we've tried to take a very diligent approach to say that there are some projects that are of a larger scale where there are many people working on those projects, and as a result, there should be some agreement there to make sure that we are paying those people, that we are investing in them, and that we are rewarding them for the highly trained, highly skilled job that they are doing. So I don't know that this bill, much like every other bill, is really sort of an intellectual or educational exercise in if we could do everything across the board for everyone, why wouldn't we do it? I think what we have tried to do here is to say, if we're looking to invest in jobs, and I think that if you start talking to Nevadans, if you go out into communities, if you start talking to your constituents, some of the biggest issues that are facing Nevadans and Nevada working families is the ability to have access to a high-paying job, a job that is going to allow them to put a roof over their head, to send their kids to school, to pay for groceries. These are real problems that people are facing. These are real fundamental things that we as a legislative body do have a duty to address. And I think one of the pieces and how it is that we can start to address that is to look for ways in which we can assure that when people are engaging in these sorts of crafts and trades, that they are being paid fairly. Part of that was the creation of Senate Bill 443. When we looked at this and said, well, what could we be doing to make sure that these hardworking Nevada families, so many of which represent a lot of our construction workers who are doing and facing those same challenges on a daily basis, those economic challenges, how can we address that? And some of these bigger utility projects employ a lot of those folks. But unfortunately, if you are paying people a competitive wage where they can afford to do those things, that might not also be a competitive bid on some of these projects. And so that is sort of the reasoning behind we looked at these sort of things. We talked with our utilities here in the state to say what sort of projects would this make sense on? Would you be able to sort of do that in an economically feasible way? And how can we ensure that those sorts of wages are being paid to folks? I understand that there is certainly a long history of why it is that we do prevailing wage. And some of that is, right, to make sure that when we are investing public dollars, not only are we making sure that we are investing in that trained and skilled workforce and paying them appropriately, but that we are also making some accommodations for market influences and where those competition scales kind of come and how you account for supply and demand and all of those pieces of it. And so while this is not something that we would traditionally think of as a public works, I think there are some differentials when it comes to utility partners here in the state, in that while they're not publicly funded with public taxpayer dollars and that the legislature is allocating dollars to a project, these are still ratepayer dollars. These are still public dollars that are being spent. And so if we can do some things to ensure that we are employing and paying the right people for these jobs, that's what we were seeking to do with this particular bill.
I'll
Follow up?
thank you, and I know you're trying to get some things done, and I understand that. And you hit on several of the things. I think you expanded on the explanation on why we should apply it to everything, because people want to make a good living. I think you're making that argument again. You did hit on a couple of things that said, well, it's ratepayers who are also taxpayers are paying this, but people that are taxpayers, basically everybody, are paying for everything. So the argument goes to all the rest of it. And I do remember when I was in the assembly still, and Crescent Hardy brought a bill that said, hey, we should stop paying prevailing wage on public works because the state is paying into these pensions and paying into the health and welfare and the state doesn't. The contractor pays the guys, and that comes out of the guys' wages. It was their compensation. It had nothing to do with the state. So when taxpayers say, oh, you can start that circle on where the money starts, any place you want, and everybody thinks they start with them, but it's really a circle. The reason for prevailing wage, in the beginning, in the Depression era, Davis and Bacon, two Republican senators, I believe they were both from New York, wanted to stabilize the marketplace at any given time. It was higher than, at any given time, 30% of the construction dollars spent in the country are public dollars, highways, streets, sewer, whatever. So the government recognized clear back then, and we adopted it, I think, in 35 in this state, might have been 36, to say when the government is spending that money in an area, we don't, with that market, that buying power, don't want to unfairly be able to depress or affect what the rates are paid in the local area that have already been established. the project in northern New York or in New York that prompted this was some large-scale project, and they got a contractor out of South Carolina because they were able to pay a lower wage. The wage rate that was paid in that area was undercut, and the government said, we don't want to be the catalyst for that type of activity. So that's how come we can justify, I can justify it all day long for public dollars on public projects to say, we don't want to be that negative influence on what is paid in the market in the area. That's why we do the survey to figure out what the prevailing wage rate is. And this being applied to private jobs then sends that balance the other direction and says, no, we don't want the government to influence what the wages are. So the government is going to say, hey, these wages are going to be applied to projects that aren't paid for out of public dollars. It's intellectually unbalanced in my view. And I know it's counterintuitive for me, the labor guy, to be saying this isn't right. I just have a hard time saying that this is going to work out. So I'll leave it there for my comments unless you want to respond and ask my other question.
Thank you, Senator Deely. Nicole Canizaro, Senate District 6, through you, Mr. Chair, to Senator Deely. So I think a couple
And
of
please
things.
do go direct.
So I think there's a few differences, right? In that, yes, I think to your point, the circular argument of everybody is a taxpayer and everybody who pays for everything could certainly be attributed to taxpayer dollars. I think when we talk about public utilities, they're public utilities, right? They're publicly regulated. That is very different from some other places. When we're talking about how they can set rates, that is also a whole different process. I think that there are differences when we look at our utilities versus just any sort of private business. And we have to, I think, in this building, be able to draw those sorts of distinctions when it might be appropriate to do so. And that's how come this also doesn't just widely apply to anything that a public utility may do. It applies to some of these larger scale construction projects. And I think, to your point of you don't want the government sort of out influencing some of the market, market pushes and pulls. I think there's validity to that argument. I've been a long supporter of prevailing wage. I have sat at this table in this body and argued for bills where we should be paying prevailing wage, where we should make sure that that is part of our discussion. I don't find this to be extraordinarily different from that. And I think because we aren't saying, hey, we should just pay prevailing wage across the board, or we should just get rid of prevailing wage across the board and let the market sort of take care of itself, we've sort of been diligent in what this applies to and who it applies to. And I think there is some sense in the idea of these being public utilities.
Thank you, Majority Leader. And I'll leave it at that, and we can just agree to disagree on that. And we've put prevailing wage on plenty of quasi-public, but there was always public financing, public bonds, sales anticipated tax rate incentives that were done to get to what would otherwise be private projects, but they have that government incentive. And we don't have that here. So the question is in subsection 4, and they do not apply to where a primary construction work is performed pursuant to a collective bargaining agreement. It says A, and then it goes on to say a worksite agreement or a project labor agreement with the public utility defined as on that. So when I see that, those are 3 different categories of agreements. And as you know, prevailing wage and the provisions that you're going to have in 070 and I think 020 says that a person has to be paid the wage rate in accordance with the survey and all of that kind of stuff. So if I'm on a collective bargaining agreement, and let's just say, for sake of argument, it's a vertical agreement. There's only one craft, one contractor, and they pay everybody the same wage scale. They have a collective bargaining agreement, they're covered. What's stopping somebody else coming and saying, hey, you looked at a hammer, so you're a carpenter, and you didn't pay him carpenter's wages, and filing wage claims? Gives everybody that platform to do that. The same thing on worksite agreements. I know there's several solar projects that have a 2-craft agreement working well, and then a project labor agreement. What does that define? I know some people will tell you well, it has to be with the building trades. And I'm saying, no, it doesn't have to be with the building trades. It can be with any labor organization or group of labor organizations. So those terms are not really well defined. Nevertheless, it still gives a platform for people to go out and say, and file wage claims, even though you may have an agreement that you're saying is okay.
Thank you for the question, Senator Daley. Nicole Canizaro, Senate District 6. So I think that in putting forward this bill, we definitely heard concerns. There are some utilities, for example, the electric utility has many collective bargaining agreements with folks who work for them. They have worksite agreements for different projects, and they do have project labor agreements for some of these other larger scale projects, right? And so we heard concerns that if the bill as originally proposed had passed, that it might disrupt some of those agreements, which are in place. I would say that the intent of the bill remains the same. When you're talking about a collectively bargained agreement, right, where there has been negotiations between the employee group and the employer to make sure that they're paying fair wages, to make sure that they are paying benefits, to make sure that they have employee protections within those. Same thing with some of the worksite agreements, and certainly when they're engaging in a PLA and there's negotiations that occur, that is accomplishing a lot of what the intent of Senate Bill 443 is intending to do. We did not want to, unravel a lot of those agreements just by virtue of passing a bill. I think that is very consistent with things that we have done in this building throughout, every session that I have been here, that if we are going to unravel collective bargaining agreements or PLAs that are out there, or these worksite agreements that do exist for some of our utilities, and in particular, there are good examples with our electric utilities, that we did not want those to be endangered just by passing a bill. And so we have made accommodations for that. I think part B of that is, with respect to the intent of what it is we are trying to do, which I think goes back to making sure that we are paying people appropriately, that they have a good job, that they have benefits, that they have this, I think, dignity in the very hard and very skilled work that they are doing across the board. We want to make sure that we are preserving that. And so to the extent that those agreements exist and that those have been signed and are in place, we did not want to disrupt those. And that's why you see that language in here, to make sure that we are not, by virtue of passing a bill, unraveling all of those.
Final comment if I can. And thank you for that. And I won't ask you to change something that I'm likely not going to be in support of in the future anyway, but you might want to look at so that people can't use this as a platform to start wage disputes over various things when an agreement is in place, right? That might be helpful. Don't know if it'll get me there, but so I'm not going to say, hey, do this and that'll be good. I'm just saying that it's something to consider. Thank you.
Next, we have Senator Neal, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one question, and it's on Section 3, Sub 2. So in 704, 75, 71, it also applies to affiliates, right, in statute. And so I guess with the broad use of public utilities, how many affiliates would this language then apply to?
So thank you for the question, Senator Neal. Nicole Canizaro, Senate District 6. I think that is a great question, and I don't know that we have the answer readily available on the number, but we will definitely get that information to you.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, I'd like to thank you both for the presentation, and I'd like to invite you to please sit back, and I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 443 to please come forward. Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Thomas Morley, THOMAS-MORLEY, representing Teamsters Local 631, and we're in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members. Todd Inglesby, representing the Professional Firefighters of Nevada. We think it's vital, especially based on these utilities that we're talking about, based on the infrastructure that they provide, the safety that they provide actually in our 911 system, being able to heat a home, provide heat for folks in winter. We think this is very, very important. We think having the best skilled labor force working on that is equally as important. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jackie Spicer, Jackie-Spicer. I'm the Coalition Coordinator for the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition. We are a statewide coalition of community organizations fighting for sustainability, justice, and equity in all levels of government decision-making. Through grassroots organizing and policy advocacy, we aim to ensure a just transition away from extractive industries and to liberate frontline communities from environmental hardships. Our coalition supports Senate Bill 443 to require prevailing wage provisions for public utility infrastructure projects because we believe this is a necessary step for a truly just transition. Throughout the decades, workers and communities have experienced near constant economic transitions as industries have risen and declined. More often than not, transition has meant the loss of jobs, identities, and communities with little to no support. Nevada is a leader in the global transition to a clean energy economy, which is already producing millions of new jobs. Many of those are related to public utility infrastructure. We need to make sure that every worker affected by change in these industries is guaranteed a good-paying job and a good retirement that supports our families and strengthens our unions. Workers and communities must not be left behind in the transition to a clean energy economy, and the need for a large-scale just transition for workers and communities has never been more urgent. Strengthening workers' rights and labor standards through Senate Bill 443 is a step towards a better future that we hope to see for all Nevadans. Thank you for your time and dedication to the people of our state.
And thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Flores, Jeremy Newman for the record, representing IBW Local 396. We're in support of 443 with the conceptual amendment.
And thank you for joining us. Anybody else wishing to speak in support Las Vegas or Carson City? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone in support of Senate Bill 443?
If you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 443, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. You have no callers in support at this time.
I do see some folk now joining us in Las Vegas. Are you joining us in support of Senate Bill 443? Please proceed, whoever wishes to go first.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, distinguished Senate and committee members. For the record, my name is Luke Brand, District Representative of the Operating Engineers Local 12. I'm also here speaking as a resident of the state of Nevada this evening. I'm here this evening to urge all parties involved to approve Senate Bill 443. The passage of this bill will help strengthen the community in the form of prevailing wages on public utility jobs, which directly benefits your constituents and their families here in the state of Nevada. Again, please consider supporting and passing this crucial Senate Assembly bill. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening.
And thank you for joining us. Next person in support.
Good afternoon, Anthony Ivester here for the record, Secretary Treasurer of the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers. We are here in support of Senate Bill 443. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Next person in support, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Jesus Loya for the Roofers and Waterproofers, Local 162. We're in support of SB 443. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Next person in support, please.
Hi, my name is Leslie Patu, PATU, and I'm with the Heat and Frost Insulators of Local 135, and we're here in support of Bill 443.
Thank you for joining us. Next person in support, please.
Good evening, Chair and Committee. My name is Ryan Litster, last name Litster. I'm a business agent with Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, Local 525, and we absolutely support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Next person in support.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jimmy Shores with the Ironworkers Local 433. We support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Next person in support, please.
Good evening, Chair. My name is Keith Welch. I'm with Local 669 Sprinkler Fitters, and I'm in support of this bill.
Thank you for joining us. Next person in support. Seeing no one else in Las Vegas, BPS, do we have anybody else that just joined us over the phone in support of Senate Bill 443?
If you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 443, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. BPS will stay with you. Is there anybody wishing to join us over the phone in opposition to Senate Bill 443?
If you would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 443, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to invite anybody wishing to testify in opposition in Carson City or Las Vegas to please come forward. I see only one person in Las Vegas, so we'll start in Las Vegas and then we'll make our way back to Carson City. Welcome from Las
Thank you
Vegas.
so much, Chair Flores and members of the committee. My name is Anahit Baghshetsan. For the record, that is ANAHIT BAGHSHETSYN, and I'm a research assistant at Nevada Policy. Nevada Policy today stands in opposition of Senate Bill 443, which proposes extending prevailing wage requirements to the contractors working on significant natural gas and infrastructure projects, as we heard earlier. While it is the priority to enhance the safety and ensure high quality work, this bill will have unintended economic consequences on states' budget and financial well-being. Prevailing wage laws in Nevada have historically resulted in labor costs significantly inflating and exceeding the regular market rates. Our very own research, on which I have testified not a few times in front of this committee, indicates that the prevailing wage requirements and premiums are usually 45% higher than the average market premiums. For instance, to just put it in numbers, from the year 2009 to 2010, prevailing wage mandates cost Nevada taxpayers nearly $1 billion. Now, if this bill is passed, the magnitude of the wage premiums will be then passed on to projects that are not usually defined as public works. Figures below that you would see on the exhibit submitted to the committee, hopefully, that average contractors in Northern Nevada receive 44.2% higher wage, according to prevailing wage, and 45.8% higher in the Southern Nevada areas. So when we extend this prevailing wage premiums to regular works, we then pass on this cost to businesses, contractors, regular taxpayers, and the very workers that this bill is trying to protect would ultimately be negatively affected, because this increased cost would affect hiring decisions, building costs, and just speed. So for this very obvious reasons, we would like to urge the committee to oppose this piece of legislation. Thank you very much for your time today.
And thank you for joining us. Whoever wishes to go first here in Carson City.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mac Bybee. I represent the Associated Builders and Contractors. I'd like to start out by saying, what is prevailing wage? Well, prevailing wage in the state of Nevada is in NRS 338. It establishes the wage rate for taxpayer-funded public works. It references safety once, but it references it as in NRS 618, which requires every construction company to have a safety plan, which is housed in the OSHA statute. If we want to talk about workforce development, that is housed in NRS 610. That is the apprenticeship laws of this state. So when we want to expand something that is specifically set for public works to guide government on what a wage rate should be, it was never intended to be expanded outside into the private sector or onto private jobs. And for this reason, ABC stands in opposition to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Please.
Thank you. Alexis Motorist with the Nevada Chapter Associated General Contractors. We ditto to what Mr. Bybee said, and we also share the same concerns as expressed by Senator Daley. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Brian Reeder, speaking on behalf of the Nevada Contractors Association. First, we want to thank the proponents for sharing the amendment with us. NCA is composed of both signatory and open shop contractors, both of whom reviewed the bill and the amendment and came to a position of opposition. NCA has consistently opposed applying public works requirements such as prevailing wage to private sector work. We don't believe it's good policy to blur the lines between public and private construction and begin applying pieces of public works law to privately developed work. However, we always welcome the dialogue on prevailing wage, as we believe it's a very important component to construction in Nevada. But in this case, NCA is opposed.
Thank you for joining us. Anybody else wishing to testify in opposition? Seeing none, we'll move to the neutral position. BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us in the neutral position over the phone?
If you would like to testify neutral on Senate Bill 443, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Thank you. Anybody in Carson City or Las Vegas wishing to testify in neutral? Seeing none in Las Vegas, we'll start here in Carson City. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Scott Leedom, Scottleedom, here on behalf of Southwest Gas. I just wanted to thank the majority leader and the Southern Nevada Building Trades Union for working with us on an amendment that could get us to neutral. Just by way of information for you, the projects that this will apply to are projects that will be approved through our new resource planning process that was approved last session by Senate Bill 281. The pipeline replacement projects that will be approved through that process will be the ones that this work applies, or that prevailing wage applies to. So with that, happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
I don't think we have any questions. Thank you for joining us. Seeing no one else in neutral, Majority Leader, any closing remarks?
I wanted to just take a moment, Nicole Canizaro, Senate District 6, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee, and Senator Daley, for, I think, the very thoughtful discussion around the parameters of this bill. I want to say, bless you, a special thank you, certainly to all of the folks down in Las Vegas and here who came up in support. A lot of them, I would note, are exactly the sort of folks that we want to make sure are getting these really good paying jobs. They're the people who are coming just off the job site and coming here to come and testify and support. They're the kind of families that we should be looking to make sure that we are uplifting and supporting. We know that economic issues for so many Nevada families are really at the forefront. It's something that they are struggling with, and we see that, we hear that, we feel that. And I think that if we can do some things to make sure that we're making life a little bit easier for them, maybe not perfect, maybe not fixing everything on the economic forefront, but if we can do something to make sure that all those hardworking folks who came today to support this bill feel it for their families, that to me makes a difference, and that to me is the whole intent behind Senate Bill 443. I appreciate the thoughtful comments of everyone. We'll keep working on this to see if we can get to a point to maybe lessen some of the opposition and assuage folks' concerns. I do think that there are some differences with what we are seeking to do here and the entities to which these would apply, and I think you heard from the gas utility that this would apply to some of those resource planning huge projects that we are talking about. And the more that we can invest in those and invest in those families and these people who have come here to show their support, I think we should be doing absolutely everything we can to make their lives a little bit easier. And so I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to everyone involved.
With that, thank you, Madam Majority Leader. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 443. Thank you, everybody who joined us for that hearing. Next on the agenda, we have Senate Bill 402. And before we get started, members, I do want to give you a heads up on Senate Bill 402. Because we are at the eve of first committee passage, they have been working diligently to work with all parties involved to find a middle ground. Unlike any other hearing that we've had up into this hearing, unfortunately, we do not have a written conceptual amendment, but there was an amendment that they're going to be proposing that was in an effort to find consensus. It was agreed upon just probably 30 minutes before this hearing even commenced. So with that, we'll go ahead and open up the hearing. Whoever wishes to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Gerardo Natarin. That's Gerardonataren, and I am a student intern with the University of Nevada, Reno, here to give a brief introduction to Senate Bill 402. Senate Bill 402 provides a vital pathway for the preservation and revitalizations of Nevada's historic buildings. Across our states, countless buildings represent key chapters of Nevada's cultural, historical, and economic story. But these structures have stood silent for decades, falling into disrepair and in need of support to maintain their original character. As a result, they have become blights in their local communities. Therefore, SB 402 offers financial incentives that encourage developers to preserve and not demolish these irreplaceable landmarks. It is very unfortunate that developers and business owners alike have to choose to demolish iconic landmarks in both urban and rural areas. And this is a decision driven by pure economic pragmatism. Restoration is simply too expensive due to the rising cost of construction and the complexity entailed. And so these historical sites are being replaced with strip malls, chain restaurants, parking complexes, and other amenities that offer little in the way of local character or a lasting legacy. Senate Bill 402 seeks to reverse this trend by reducing the financial barriers to restoration. It offers rebates on the extra property tax that come from increasing a building's property value through restoration. Under Senate Bill 402, the developer receives a portion of that increase, called incremental property tax, as a rebate to help offset the initial cost of renovation. Crucially to note, the city or county will continue to receive the original base amount of property tax that they were already collecting before the redevelopment. And it doesn't allow for cities or counties to assume risk, nor will payments be made using the general fund. Instead, Senate Bill 402 incentivizes investment in our state's heritage by making restoration more viable and attractive. And in doing so, this will reinforce Nevada's historical identity, it will stimulate tourism, and generate jobs within the state. Now, with that being said, I now pass the baton to our other presenters.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm Alexis Hill, and I'm a Washoe County Commissioner. I'm here today in my role as the representative for Washoe Tahoe. I do not represent Washoe County Commission as a whole. I have been asked by developers who want to redevelop projects in my district, and Washoe County just currently does not have the tools we need to keep our history. Senate Bill 402 is designed to give counties and cities another tool to take older, more historic vacant buildings that are currently non-producing assets, which are really net drains on our communities, and restore them to tax-generating, job-creating, positive developments. Although Nevada has a very rich history, we have buildings that, despite their character, have been sitting empty, causing blight and providing little benefit while posing a burden to our communities. This bill allows counties and cities to create restoration improvement districts and work with developers to turn these buildings and projects into community gems while maintaining their historical character. The intent of the bill is to create this district. The program is to provide municipalities with a tool that would incentivize revitalization of historic buildings in their jurisdiction. The language of the bill would allow municipalities to create a restoration improvement district that requires certain findings for a project to benefit from such a program. To qualify for the program, the project must maintain the structure, and it must be 50 years or older. It may not have operated on the site for more than 10 years outside the minimum requirements to maintain a privileged business license and to preserve the original character of the building. It requires that none of the jurisdiction's bonding capacity will be used to help finance the project. The project that qualifies for the Restoration Improvement District would receive an annual repayment of incremental property tax generated by the business. The municipality would introduce an ordinance that identifies the project, outlines all the findings that are required to qualify for the Restoration Improvement District. The governing body of the municipality would then vote, as usual, to adopt an ordinance with any terms that they deem favorable. Per the Restoration Improvement District, the project is only eligible for repayment of incremental property tax for up to 20 years after the project opens. For a municipality to create a restoration improvement district, the municipality must consult with overlapping districts that could be impacted by the creation of the district. The municipality creating the district must solicit comments from potential affected municipalities and special districts. None of the property taxes allocated towards a municipality or special district can be abated without the approval of the affected entity unless they vote for their allocation of property tax taxes to be included in the Restoration Improvement District. If impacted, the municipality and/or special district does not agree to abate their allocation of property taxes from the property in the proposed Restoration Improvement District. The municipality or general improvement district must receive the prorated portion of property taxes they would normally be entitled to from the Restoration District. This bill becomes effective upon passage and approval. Additionally, any contract entered in for the work of the project on or after passage and approval is subject to prevailing wage. I will now have Mr. Draper run through the bill and walk through each section.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mike Draper, D-R-A-P-E-R. I'm a partner at Argentum Partners, and I'm here today on behalf of the McWhinney Group. McWhinney Group has successfully restored several historic projects working with local and state governments to make this happen, including Union Station in Denver, which is a nationally recognized project and a cornerstone for downtown Denver's economic and cultural resurgence. They are the new and proud owners of the Cal Neva Lodge at Lake Tahoe. We've been working with Chair Hill and other members of the community for quite some time to try and figure out how we can restore that project. We held 100 community meetings, and I think we even underestimated the importance of the various elements to that project to the community. And so we began to look for a way to create a public-private partnership that would allow us to restore some of those non-revenue generating or more difficult to restore parts of that property. And that's where we are today. So given the thoroughness that my co-presenters did, I'm just going to do a very brief bill walkthrough. I'll start at Section 3, which defines a building restoration project. This section requires a building restoration project to be located in the municipality creating the Restoration Improvement District, maintain the original structure of the building, which is 50 years or older, allows the business to hold an active business license, not have business conducted or have been open to the public for 10 years or more, and maintain the original character of the building. So to be clear, we're talking about buildings that have been effectively closed for 10 or more years, and that are 50 years or older. So these are buildings that are truly blighted. As Chair Hill said, they're drains on their community, and we're trying to figure out how we can turn these into net positive assets for the community. Section 7 allows for a municipality to create a restoration improvement district through an ordinance. Most notably, it requires that the ordinance shall state all the findings required for a project to be eligible for a restoration improvement district, and that the ordinance shall outline the pledge of the incremental property tax to be paid to the developer. Section 8 addresses the payment pledged by a municipality through a restoration improvement district, establishing the base value of real property taxes for the property located in the restoration improvement district that must be paid to the respective taxing agency, and outlining that the increment above the base amount will be reimbursed to the developer pursuant to the ordinance created by the municipality. In other words, these properties will continue to pay the exact same property tax they're paying to the city or county or the municipality they're in. The more the developer is able to increase the value of that property, the assessed value of that property, the developer stands to get a rebate for the city or county on the incremental difference between the current amount and what the gained amount is. So the city or county will lose nothing from it. Ultimately, will gain revenue in the form of sales and use taxes, job creation, other tax benefit, and indirect economic activity. Section 10 creates the terms for a restoration improvement district, allowing only for an annual incremental tax reimbursement and not allowing a municipality to create a restoration improvement district that results in a general obligation to the municipality, charges against its credit, or to become a debt of the municipality. This essentially eliminates any risk to the municipality. Section 10 also outlines that a restoration improvement district cannot exist beyond 20 years. We believe that the best public-private partnership should be one that very much limits the exposure to the public, and that rewards the developer for doing a good job developing that property. So in this case, unlike some of the other incremental districts, the only way you can use this is on a rebate on your incremental property tax. There's no bonding. The city's not carrying any of the debt. The city's at no risk, or the municipality's at no risk in this program. Section 11 requires that prevailing wage be paid for any construction work performed on or after the effective date of the Restoration Improvement District. Now, in conversations with many parties, we have a few amendments to clean up a couple of issues, and I would direct you to the conceptual amendment found on Nellis. and I will direct you to that, but as Chair Flores suggested, we've even got some changes to that have been made in the last 30 minutes, and I'll point those out where those are different. The First Amendment is in Section 3, subsection 4. We are striking the line, has not been open to the public, and adding other than what is required to maintain a privileged license. This maintains the intent that these are buildings that have been effectively closed for 10 or more years, but recognize that there are instances where, in order to maintain a privileged license, a building needs to conduct a very small amount of business on a quarterly basis. So for instance, some of these buildings still have an active liquor license. And in some of the areas that they're in, it's more difficult to get that license. And so the owners of these buildings, while they've been closed for the last 10 years, have been doing the minimal amount of business required to keep that business license active. So that's the purpose of that amendment. The next amendment in Section 7, subsection 1, we will add we will add C, a governing body of a municipality introducing an ordinance to create a restoration improvement district must solicit comments from any overlapping municipality or special district that could be impacted financially from the creation of the restoration improvement district. The municipality or special district will have 30 days from the notification to provide comments to the municipality creating the restoration improvement district. In discussions with some of the counties, we will tweak this a little further to outline what notification looks like, i.e. by certified letter to the governing board. This addresses the fact that for many of these places, they might be in a city that's also located with a county, and both of those municipalities are receiving property tax dollars. We heard a lot of concern that it's not fair for one municipality to obligate the increment of another municipality, or for a general improvement district as well. So this requires that there be comments solicited from those that would be financially participating in it, those comments taken into account into the establishment of the Restoration Improvement District. That even goes further with the next amendment, which is Section 7 will also be amended to allow for a municipality or special district that will be impacted financially by the Restoration Improvement District the ability to collect the incremental property taxes as normal from the property in the proposed Restoration Improvement District unless the impacted municipality or special district votes for their allocation of the incremental property tax to be included in the Restoration Improvement District. What this is essentially saying, and I'll just use an example, for instance, if there was a project in the city of Reno, which is also located in Washoe County, the city of Reno might vote to approve and establish a Restoration Improvement District. What we're saying here is that that's great, that can happen, but Washoe County must also take a vote if Washoe County's share of the incremental property tax dollars is to be included. If Washoe County votes no, and the city of Reno still moves forward, and the developer still finds that is a workable way to do it, then they can go ahead. But all of the affected parties receiving, the municipalities receiving incremental property tax dollars must have a vote to participate in the Restoration Improvement District. This is also a little different than some of the other districts we have set up. We were really trying to make this a community-minded way for tax increment financing. Lastly, that's where I would suggest that if you're looking on Nellis, ignore the last amendments, and we would propose to add another subsection. In Section 3, subsection 6, we would amend it to say that a Restoration Improvement District may not include a non-restricted gaming license. So in the case of the Calaneva Resort, we've had a lot of conversations with gaming. Obviously, there's a lot of history in the Calaneva Lodge up at Lake Tahoe. But understanding the precedent that gaming has always worked hard to keep non-restricted license holders from using tax increment financing, we've agreed to insert that amendment, and we will still build a historic and I think very worthwhile project around that. With that, I think that's all the amendments. Yep. Again, we think SB 402 can be a useful tool for cities and counties to rehabilitate properties that have historic value into properties that also have current value for their community while minimizing any risk potential to the city or county and allowing them the discretion to identify these important projects and uses. And I think with that, that wasn't as brief as I had intended, but that's often the case for me, so we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. And I will say, by way of just doing a shout out, that Gerardo is actually my intern from UNR this session, and so I'm really happy to see you up there doing your thing. and very thankful for all the work you did on this bill.
We might have just hired him from you.
Good. Good, good, good. That's amazing. All right, members, any questions? Senator Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand it now that you changed it again. So the amendment to section 3, subsection 6, I guess here. So what is it going to say now? Because the way I read it now, it would be the district may be established for a project that includes a non-restricted gaming license. May not be for that unless it's in an area where the compact is, basically. So you're going to change that now? So
Chair, through you to Senator Daly. Senator Daly, we actually stole that language from a bill that you're running this session. Our original intent was to do that, and our intent, even as recently as in the last couple of days, was to do that, to really restrict. We did not want this to be a precedent-setting use of non-restricted gaming license. We've heard from gaming over and over again, and understandably so, that the precedent of gaming properties using tax increment financing to fund the development of resorts and casinos, regardless of size or location, is something that we have always tried to stay away from. And so that being said, and understanding that we have a lot of assets up there that I think we're going to be very proud of, and that I think will restore the glory to that property, we've agreed that we should just go ahead and maintain that precedent of taking out the ability for a non-restricted license holder to have a restoration improvement district.
so which part, where are you going to get the tax increment financing from? What I understood that this was going to be basically the Cal Neva project, which is in both Nevada and California. We can't do anything for tax increment on the California side. And only the Nevada side of it can have the non-restricted gaming license. So what other properties are going to be in this new district? So I'm not following how this language is going to make it work.
Chair, through you to Senator Daly.
And please do go direct.
Senator Daly, that's a good question. I think what the McWhinney Group has decided is that.
And if I could just have you identify for the record, please.
I apologize, Chair. Mike Draper for the record. The McWhinney Group feels like there's enough to that property, and that we have enough plans, the Frank Sinatra Theater, certainly the Lodge and the Story and stuff like that, that gaming, this was never going to be about gaming. That property was never, we were going to have a very small gaming floor. It was never going to be the revenue driver. That restoring the property and bringing the Sinatra Theater back to life with modern day enhancements, and bringing the rooms back to life with modern day enhancements, and really creating a Cal Neva Lodge 2.0 will increase that property value enough without the gaming component, without the non-restricted gaming component, that there will be a significant amount of tax increment.
So I'm just want to make sure I understand. They're going to give up the non-restricted gaming license, so they're still going to have gaming, the 15,000 square feet. I know you said it was small. Or are you just going to try to segregate it? I'm just not following how you're going to do this.
Senator Daly, I think that we're prepared, we're hopeful to continue to have conversations to figure out a way to keep gaming, even if it's a restricted license, included in that property, but prepared to give up the privileges should they decide to participate, right? We still have to go through Washoe County and have these discussions with Washoe County, but should they decide to participate, they would be required to give up their non-restricted gaming license to participate in a restoration improvement district.
So on that, the whole restoration improvement district was started kind of basically for that project at the lake. So now with this language and not restricting it to where the compact is and various things, when you went through the whole part about this could be overlapping districts and other people's tax increment, so this is going to be statewide now, people can do this, or was it still just going to be confined to the lake?
Senator Daly, Mike Draper for the record. We set out to establish a bill that there are projects all over the state that could benefit from this. Heck, there's one right across the street from us that could benefit from this. And so we set out to try and find something that would take these buildings that have long been abandoned but had history tied to them and not make the only option tear them down. And so that was really how we set out. Certainly, the Calneva has some unique amenities that many of these other projects don't have, and so we were still trying to figure out how to include those amenities. But yes, this is a project. In fact, for a little while, I think we've got somebody in Southern Nevada that's going to testify. But for a little while, when I would talk to people about this bill, they thought it was representing a project in Las Vegas. So I do think there's some projects, and I think there's some representatives in the audience today that will talk about the usefulness of this bill to projects in their community.
And understood, thank you. And I'm not opposed to having it be a restoration area in the state where it makes sense for similar type buildings not to be torn down. That's just not the way I understood it at first, which is why I was asking the question. So if it's going to be statewide, and then you're addressing the issue regarding the unrestricted gaming, can't be used for an restricted gaming project type of situation, which then may or may not affect what you do at the Calneva. But I think I understand the rest of it now. And having to be statewide is not a bad thing. There are buildings in places like this all over the state that are worthy of being saved, so.
And if I may, Senator Daley, Mike Draper for the record, one of the things that we really see this as a tool for a city or county. It doesn't mean that just because you have a building that meets a qualification, a city or county might say, we don't think that's the best use for that. Tear it down, build something else. Or they might look and say, we really want to see that. You and I both remember a project in Reno that now fortunately is doing, I think they're doing well, but the King's Inn, long sat abandoned in the middle of the city of Reno. And obviously, the city of Reno had to get creative with how to make that something that wasn't cost prohibitive for a developer after I think it was abandoned for 25 years, right in the middle of downtown, to build, and they turned it into multifamily condos and things like that. So the city or county can work with a developer to try and figure out what the best use. That's why we initially started this bill. One of the caveats was that you had to have your stated purpose for business had to be in line with the stated purpose for business when the building was originally built. We broadened that a little bit to make it to where you just have to maintain the historic character, i.e. something like the King's Inn or some other project. You might decide there might be a better use for it than what it was there, but still maintain the history of that building.
I think the King's Inn's probably a bad example, and too bad we weren't able to save the machine shop at Union Pacific in Sparks, but nevertheless, King's Inn's a bad example. No historic value there.
Senator Neal, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to work backwards. So I believe it's Section 10, and this was not amended out. So you have a 20-year anniversary on this restoration improvement district. And I guess what I'm trying to understand, like we're isolating it to like one instance, but it would be helpful, I guess, I'm like trying to visualize the mapping, like this restoration improvement district, how much of this thought overlaps with an RDA?
It's a great question, Senator Neal. For the record, Mike Draper, and if I might, it's great to see you in the building today. So by statute already, you can't overlap a special taxing district with a redevelopment district. So if a redevelopment district is already established, you cannot set up a restoration improvement district in that redevelopment district. So when we're talking about districts, there's already statute in place that says you can't overlap a redevelopment district. Furthermore, when we're talking about mapping, and I don't think this is a question we're asking, but just to be clear, because I know for some folks it's confusing, but we typically use the term district for the tourism improvement district or a business improvement district or a restoration improvement district. It could be as small as a line drawn around one parcel of property. And that's oftentimes what it's used is around one project. We're not talking about big swaths like a redevelopment district.
So then that leads me to my second question, which is in, I guess this is section 8, where if this was to pass, you have section 8, page 4. It is lines 6 through, I guess it's 6 through 14. We're talking about bonding, right? Help me understand, because you have the amendment here, which is saying if a municipality or special district would be impacted financially, then they have this comment period to either exempt themselves. So this is all theoretical, because if you're saying it's a TID or a, how would the bonding work? How would this be paid? I'm just like, I'm not clear on like how this really practically works.
So for the record, Mike Draper, Senator Neal. So the practicality of this, and or I can follow up with you on this, is LCB obviously helped us draft this in accordance with some of the other taxing district statutes. But the practical way that this would work is that a municipality would work with a developer, establish a property that meets the qualifications, 10 years closed, 50 years or older, and then could establish a restoration improvement district for that property. The property, the county or city, the municipality would still get the base level of property tax, i.e. the property tax that's being paid, the property tax amount that's being paid when the restoration improvement district goes into place. As the developer invests in that property, the assessed value of that property goes up, so the tax increment goes up. So the developer could get that amount rebated back at the end of every years, get up to 100%. The city or county has a discretion to make a deal with the developer on what the amount is, but up to 100% of that incremental amount above and beyond what the base level is, so that the city or county isn't losing anything on what they've been collecting for at least the past 10 years. We also went further, though, to make it to where a city or county, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night. I'm not an attorney, and I cannot remember. LCB did a great job of explaining that section to me, so I'm gonna have to follow up with you. But the city or county the developer cannot use any of the city or county's bonding capacity. The city or county cannot charge against their credit. In no way does a city or county incur any indebtedness into this program. Unlike some of the other tax increment financing measures that we have, where you can work with the developer on bonding, on upfront payments, on things like that, the only way you can use this is on an annual rebate. So you would still have to pay 100% of the property tax, and the city or county would rebate the increment back to you that was agreed upon when the ordinance was set up.
Okay. I mean, I saw that provision in section 10 where no agreement can levy, you know, and then it had like a list, but you're expecting this, I mean, you mentioned in your testimony that you're expecting, someone thought this would be good to be used down south?
I think we've got a couple projects down south, and we have heard that there's others that in rural Nevada, we know there's projects. So essentially what this requires a developer to do is upfront to be financially, the whole project be privatized, right? And the developer to come in, make the investment, the developer then reaps the benefit of it. If the assessed value doesn't go up as much as the developer doesn't get as much. In theory, if the project doesn't even go anywhere, the developer doesn't get anything, and the city or county is out nothing other than having passed an ordinance. So, but there's projects like this all over where it's so cost prohibitive for the developer to restore an older building, the things that go into abating some of the hazards in the building, to modernizing it, to bringing it up to local code, that a lot of times it's just cheaper for them to tear it down. So we were trying to come up with a mechanism that could be an effective mechanism while minimizing the risk to the city or county that would encourage the developer to do the things that it requires to bring those properties up to standards and turn them into asset generating projects for their community, which is where we came up with this. It's much more limited than other TIF financing measures, and part of that is because we've heard your testimony in the past. So we wanted to eliminate or reduce the risk substantially for a city or county while still being able to reap the benefit of projects. There's a reason they've been closed for 10 or more years, and oftentimes it's because it's cost prohibitive to try and figure out what to do with them.
I guess, and my final question is, like, when I initially read this, the first thing I thought about was when Assemblywoman Swank tried to do the Main Street program, right? And then in finance, when we've heard about, I think it's the Gemma Theater or something, or the Gym Theater, like, why wouldn't we just seek to potentially, like, go into that language and try to expand, especially if you're claiming that these are historic or buildings that we want to keep? Like, just go in and tamper with that language.
Senator Neal, to be clear, one of the challenges for some of these buildings is they're not on a historic registry. Being on a historic registry or having some kind of formal historic listing also has a lot of requirements about what you can or can't do in restoring that building. So we wanted to give some of the developers some of that freedom. Furthermore, there are many buildings that, while they're important to their community or they've been around for a long time and have some historic value, are not qualified to be on a historic registry. So we wanted to open it up in a case-by-case basis for a city or county to establish, well, that building is important to us. It might not be on a historic registry, but that theater is important, or that hotel is important, or that courthouse, or whatever it might be is important to us. And we do think that should qualify, and maybe there's another use for it. It could be used as apartments, or it could be used as, you know, something different than what it was originally used for, but still have the historic value.
Thanks.
Senator Rogich, please.
Very quick, thank you, Chair. Very quick question. If it was under the historic register, would you be able to hold on to that gaming license?
Sure, through you to Senator Rogich. That is a question I don't have an answer to. I will find that answer out, certainly, and I will get back to you about that. Absolutely.
Senator Ellison, please.
Thank you. And I believe in restoring a lot of these old buildings, mostly if they're going to be utilized and used for what they should be used for. One of the questions I've got is, you said they're going to be getting the abatement for 10 years. They'll get the tax frozen for 10 years. After 10 years, at what point in time do they start paying full taxes? Or did they take the deed of the property? What happens at that point in time?
Senator Ellison, to be clear, the time is 20 years. But regardless of the time, they'll be paying their full property tax for that 20 years. Whatever the deal they've worked out with the city or county, whatever the ordinance has said, they'll get rebated back. So anything above the base frozen amount, they can negotiate with the city or county to get back. Once the 20 years is up, that full amount, the city or county is done rebating them. So the city or county holds on to the full amount in perpetuity going forward of that property tax. So it's essentially an investment, a low-risk investment by our city or county, that they're rebating the property tax, the increment for 20 years, in order to reap the benefit of sales tax or job creation, and ultimately the full value of that property tax 20 years later.
But at the end of that 20 years, do they have possession of the ownership of the building? Or is that still?
The developer will always own the building. Will always own the building.
Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you again for the presentation. And I'm going to invite all three of you to sit back in the gallery. And at this time, I'll invite those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 402, Carson City or Las Vegas, if you could please come forward. Good evening, whoever wishes to go first. We'll start here in Carson. Oh, actually, we'll start in Las Vegas just because we just have one gentleman up there. Welcome. We'll go to Las Vegas in support of Senate Bill 402.
Hello, my name is Jay Dapper. Do you need my address for the record?
Not necessary. Thank you.
Okay, I am the owner of the historic Huntridge Theater in Las Vegas, built in 1944, and I am here in favor of this bill. As Mike Draper explained, it is very difficult to restore these old buildings. The Huntridge Theater has been sitting vacant for probably 20 years at this point, and sits at the corner of Charleston and Maryland Parkway and is the cornerstone of downtown Las Vegas. And I have successfully redeveloped several historic properties in downtown Las Vegas over the years. And as Mr. Draper explained, it is very difficult to pencil these projects. In fact, in most cases, it's almost impossible. The Huntridge Theater over the years has kind of fallen into disrepair, and the neighborhood around the Huntridge Theater is currently in this great redevelopment cycle where there's a lot of great new businesses and restaurants and things that are happening. I happen to own the Huntridge Shopping Center that's directly across the street, and all of the people that are in the neighborhood, and specifically in the Huntridge neighborhood behind the theater, have been hoping for something to happen for quite some time. We've recently signed a lease with an amazing community theater group that is a part of a coalition that's going to bring community theater back to Las Vegas, and their home is going to be in the historic Huntridge Theater. The group is out of New York, called the Soho Playhouse, and they have a coalition of a lot of local theaters that are all going to co-locate at the historic Huntridge Theater. And so a piece of a bill like this will go tremendous. It'll give me the ability to help restore this theater and bring it back to life. And instead of it sitting there vacant on that corner, or like Mr. Draper said, potentially somebody coming and tearing it down, it will allow us to kind of breathe new life into the theater. And then I'd like to just say one last thing is, so the Huntridge is currently on the National Historic Register. It's also on the state's historic register and the city's historic register. So we actually fit in all three of those categories.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. And we will come back to Carson City, seeing no one else in Las Vegas.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Mindy Elliott, Senior Vice President of Regulatory Affairs at Flynn Judici Government Affairs, representing today the Nevada Housing Coalition. I'm here today to express the coalition's strong support for Senate Bill 402, which authorizes local governments to establish restoration improvement districts aimed at revitalizing buildings that are at least 50 years old. This legislation is a crucial step toward preserving Nevada's architectural heritage while simultaneously promoting economic development. By allowing counties and cities to allocate a portion of property tax revenues to assist with the capital cash flow to ensure the financial success of the restoration, SB 402 creates a compelling incentive for private investment in historic restoration projects. Moreover, the bill mandates that construction work within these districts adheres to prevailing wage requirements, thereby upholding fair labor standards. In essence, Senate Bill 402 thoughtfully balances historic preservation, economic growth, granting local governments the flexibility to rejuvenate aging structures and enhance community character. We would like to thank Senator Flores for sponsoring this important piece of legislation. The Nevada Housing Coalition has provided a letter of support to Nellis, and I thank you for your time and respectfully urge the committee to support Senate Bill 402. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Flores and members of the committee. For the record, Jennifer Berthium, Government Affairs Manager at the Nevada Association of Counties, or NACO. We would like to thank the bill sponsor as well as the presenters, especially Washoe County Commission Chair Hill. This bill, as amended, presents an innovative, flexible, and transparent process for local governments to address longstanding challenges related to aging and underutilized buildings. This is especially true in our rural counties, some examples being the Gem Theater in Lincoln County or portions of the White Pine County Main Street project. For these reasons, NACO is in support of SB 402. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair. Warren Hardy, members of the committee representing the Nevada Urban Consortium. Our member cities represent over 50% of all the residents of Nevada, and we're here in support of this bill. My personal resolution for this session is not to use the word tool in the toolbox, so I won't go there. But this is a potential vehicle for the entities to be able to do some good in our community. So we're in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Flores and members of the committee. For the record, Kelly McNeil, Executive Director for the Nevada League of Cities. SB 402 represents a significant opportunity for Nevada municipalities to revitalize again infrastructure and stimulate local economies. This empowerment ensures that decisions are tailored to the unique characteristics and priorities of each community. For these reasons, the Nevada League of Cities supports SB 402. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Heather Westling Gross, and I serve as Business Attraction Senior Vice President for the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. And our organization has provided a support letter, and we are here today to support SB 402. I would just like to say that in my past, I've been an economic development practitioner for more than 25 years. Most of that in the Chicagoland, Wisconsin area in the Midwest. And these types of tools in the toolbox help us very much to be able to preserve multiple buildings throughout that state. And in our career, help to make the case for developers to save buildings in key neighborhoods that were transitional and helped to preserve the identity of those neighborhoods. And so many times the capital stack just does not work to make these buildings viable in their current states for transitional uses or new uses. And so these types of bills go a long way in helping to determine new uses for the future and be able to preserve what's there. So with that, we're in support of this bill, and thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair. For the record, my name is Cameron Grash, Carson City's Government Affairs Liaison. On Thursday, April 3rd, the Carson City Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to support SB 402 as being one of the oldest cities in this state. We have many buildings that we could use this economic development instrument on. And for that reason, we thank you for bringing this bill forward, and we respectfully request that the committee pass this bill.
And thank you for joining us. Anyone else wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 402? Seeing none. BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone in support of Senate Bill 402?
If you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 402, please press *9 now. Chair, you have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. BPS will stay on the phone line. Is there anybody wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 402?
If you would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 402, please press *9 now. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Anyone wishing to testify in opposition in person, either in Carson City or Las Vegas? Good evening, welcome. Whoever wishes to go first.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Michael Alonso. I'm here on behalf of Caesars Entertainment in opposition to SB 402 as written. We appreciate Senator Flores bringing this bill and allowing us to have this discussion, and I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, that you and I have had several discussions on this matter. Caesars does not oppose the general proposition in the bill for local governments to have an option available to help redevelop certain historic structures. Caesars, however, adamantly opposes the use of tax increment financing for a gaming-related project. Caesars does not believe it's good public policy for casinos or casino-related projects to receive tax increment financing, abatements, or other public funding for casino projects. As you all know, Caesars owns and operates Harrah's and Harvey's Resorts at State Line and Tahoe. The Tahoe market is a very competitive gaming market, just like every other gaming market is in this state. And we applaud efforts by developers to invest their capital to develop or redevelop projects that will hopefully attract customers, local residents to the area, employ Nevadans, and pay taxes. We're happy to compete on a level playing field. We simply don't believe that providing tax dollars in any form to casino-related projects is a good idea. And it is not good public policy for state or local governments to provide public dollars to these projects. We also don't believe that when it comes to the casino industry anywhere in the state of Nevada, neither the state or local governments should be allowed to pick winners and losers. There are hundreds of non-restricted licensees in the state of Nevada of all shapes and sizes that risk their own capital in an effort to compete with casinos that may be nearby in another city or county, out of state, or on tribal lands. Casinos employ thousands of people across the state of Nevada and pay significant taxes to state and local governments without asking for public money, and they should be able to compete on a level playing field. Caesars believes that is good public policy and should stay that way. However, with the proposed amendment, we're happy to look at it. We haven't been able to see anything because it's conceptual. I would like to point out in the record, though, that the Cal Neva that was discussed has a non-restricted gaming license. It's a grandfathered non-restricted gaming license. They operate gaming in that location every quarter to maintain their non-restricted gaming license. So any amendment to this bill that seeks to take out non-restricted gaming would have to address that and be very technical in nature so that we're covered under the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure that they'll be working with you diligently to make sure that everybody's happy. Whoever wishes to go next, please.
Thank you, Senator Flores. Good evening, and members of the committee. My name is Stephen Esquaga. I'm Corporate Director of Business Development for Peppermill Casinos. If you're not familiar with Peppermill, outside of our coffee shop on the Strip, we operate strictly in northern Nevada. We have the Peppermill Resort Casino in Reno, the Western Village in the city of Sparks, and 3 properties in Wendover, Nevada. And the reason I bring that up is we serve a broad sampling of northern Nevada tourists and locals. We have just under 5,000 employees. And while we were very supportive of the use of TIF funds on special projects, blighted areas, even the discussion of historical venues, we're very concerned when we're getting to the topic of TIF funding with gaming properties. With over 300 non-restricted gaming licenses held in the state of Nevada, as Mr. Alonso brought up, it's a very competitive industry and one that we get concerned with where we're forcing electeds to pick winners and losers. Gaming was legalized in Nevada to pay taxes, not to receive them. And while we do support the Cal Neva's plans and this last iteration of changes and proposal of taking the gaming element out, we're going to continue with our opposition until we're assured that the gaming removal is done right. I think Senator Daley, you brought up some concerns of how that non-restricted gaming license would actually be moved. And I do think if we can be assured that that is not going to be part of the project, we would switch from our opposition. But thank you for your time.
And thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, Russell Rowe here on behalf of Boyd Gaming Corporation. I'll keep it very brief. The 2 gentlemen before me were very articulate in expressing the opposition and the basis with respect to non-restricted licensees being included in this legislation. I had a brief opportunity to review the amendment as I read it. It still sets the exact same precedent that is concerning to us as resort properties. And with that, we stand opposed. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I don't see anybody else here in Carson City, but we do have folk in Las Vegas. Good evening, welcome. And I believe your microphone is off.
There it is. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Flores, Vice Chair Orangel, committee members. My name is Virginia Valentine, Virginia Valentine. I am here today to speak on behalf of the Nevada Resort Association in opposition to SB 402. The association has no objections to the use of tax increment financing for redevelopment of blighted areas or tax increment financing for historic preservations. Gaming was legalized to create jobs, encourage capital investment, and to create tourism destination that it is today. But primarily, gaming was legalized to generate tax revenue for the state. Since that time, taxation on gaming has generated billions of dollars in revenue for the state. According to the Gaming Control Board in 2024, The state collected almost $1 billion in tax revenue from the percentage fees on non-restricted licensees alone. Of the over 300 non-restricted gaming licensees operating casinos, none of them received tax increment financing. We laud CalNeva's plans to preserve an important part of Nevada history. However, SB 402 would set a precedence for subsidizing casinos with public dollars. We do not support the use of tax increment financing for gaming. In summary, we oppose the part of the bill that allows the use of TIF for financing for gaming operations. We support the use of historic preservation, provided the findings needed to justify the use of TIF funds are met. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this evening. Seeing no one else in Carson City or Las Vegas, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone in opposition?
If you would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 402, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Sounds good. And lastly, we'll stay on the phone. Anybody wishing to testify in the neutral position over the phone?
If you would like to testify neutral for Senate Bill 402, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Sounds good. Carson City or Las Vegas, anybody wishing to testify in the neutral position for Senate Bill 402? We see none in Las Vegas, but we do have somebody here in Carson City. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Flores, members of the committee. Joanna Jacob, JACOB, on behalf of Clark County. We are neutral at this time with the amendments discussed by Mr. Draper. We've worked with the bill proponents, and we have historically worked on tax increment financing bills throughout the last sessions, because as noted for the county, we have incorporated cities in Southern Nevada. There's discussion about projects in Southern Nevada. It is a statewide bill, and we do have concern about the direction of property taxes away from regional services. And so that's why it was important to us to have the formal notification to the impacted body so that we could decide if we could make a decision on the redirection of those taxes or to file an objection. We are still continuing to work on the amendments Mr. Draper discussed about the form of the notification, and also there was a discussion about existing state law that prevents overlap on top of other redevelopment agencies. So we will continue to work on the amendment, still neutral at this time, and we will probably remain so if those things remain. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Seeing no one else in opposition, any closing remarks?
Thank you, Chairman and committee members. Alexis Hill from Washoe County. For the record, we really appreciate your time on this matter, and we will continue to work with our partners, our gaming partners, to make sure that the language meets their standards, and hopefully we hope to see this bill move forward. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
And thank you. And with that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 402. Thank you all again for the presentation. I look forward to all the working groups to continue to find that resolution. Next, and I do see Senator Steinbeck here. Welcome. I'd like to open up the hearing on Senate Bill 373. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good evening, Chair. Are you ready for me to start, sir?
Yes, please proceed.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Chair Flores and members of the Senate Committee on Government Affairs. I know this is a marathon day, so we will be as brief and thorough as we can. For the record, my name is John Steinbeck. I represent Senate District 18 in Clark County. I appreciate the opportunity to present Senate Bill 373 today, which requires the adoption of model ordinances for regional business licenses across counties and incorporated cities in Nevada. The bill aims to streamline the licensing process, reduce administrative burdens for businesses, and foster regional cooperation among local governments. Currently, counties and cities regulate businesses within their jurisdictions and may enter agreements to issue multi-jurisdictional licenses for specific industries. However, there's no comprehensive system for regional business licenses applicable to broader categories of the businesses. We did apply an amendment today, which I hope is in front of you at this point in time.
Members, do you have the amendment? Please proceed.
Thank you. So with me today from Clark County is Joanna Jacobs, and she's going to assist me with going through this bill again. And really what this bill is, sir, is to make it easier for businesses to attain a business license and go to work. So I'll let Joanna kind of speak more to the details.
Thank you, Senator Steinbeck. Joanna Jacob, JACOB, on behalf of Clark County. Very pleased to work with our senator, a friend of the county, on this bill. And the amendment before you is pretty simple. I won't go line by line or section by section, but you can see that it applies to counties and with the amendment in Clark County, because the work that we're going to talk about has really been one that has been done in collaboration with the county and our larger cities in Clark County to try and work towards a more structure about multi-jurisdictional licensing. So it would give us the framework basically up in Southern Nevada to try and work on aligning our ordinances to work towards multi-jurisdictional business licenses. And then we were really looking at trying to define the types of categories of businesses. I know we've had bills here before this committee about trying to streamline business licensing, and we will be looking at trying to put a framework in place where we regulate businesses that are of the same general type of business. They're regulated in the same way, so we're not talking about a privileged license, which is about like alcohol or those things that are more heavily impacted, but those that we could easily align our ordinances is one of the barriers that we frequently have in trying to find this. And so you will see throughout the amendment that we replaced the term regional with multi-jurisdictional license, because that is how we are referring to it in Southern Nevada. On page 2 of the bill, we deleted language in the original draft that said that we would align our fees, but instead that we would try to include and come to an agreement on revenue sharing structure for the participating jurisdictions. And then it provides for agreement basically on how we are going to do this. And you will see outlined that we are going to look into the types of businesses that are regulated in the same way in time, place, and manner, and also same kind of renewal period. And that's kind of the low-hanging fruit that we're looking at. Just so you know, we have been working on this. The jurisdictions that we are currently working on for multi-jurisdictional business license, we committed last session to work on it for sidewalk vendors. We should have that in place before the end of the year. We are working on business support services, janitorial and cleaning services. These are types of businesses that have to travel across jurisdictional lines in Southern Nevada, repair and handyman. And this will create a standard and kind of a structure for what's being in place right now. And we'll look at other businesses. Over the past years, we've seen growth in certain businesses that are also mobile, such as TNCs, third-party delivery apps, and peer-to-peer car sharing. Automation services, AI technology, and new technologies are coming into place. We also have some language in the bill about coordinating with the state system, Silver Flume. We heard about that bill earlier this session when we talked about Senator Taylor's bill that was before you about the integration with the state system. That is important as we move towards the multi-jurisdictional business licensing, that we can also integrate with the state business license, because it usually is a requirement for businesses businesses to also have to register with the state. And that will help to ease the way for the businesses in Southern Nevada. So with that, I guess I think that's it in a nutshell of what we were trying to do, to try and create a structure, because we see bills, and I know that this is something that you hear about as legislators from businesses in your districts, that we are trying to make sure that we can continue to work on this, and it is something that will be helpful to us in Southern Nevada as we continue to move forward. So with that, I guess, Senator, if you don't have anything else to say, I will defer to you.
Does John Steinbeck for the record? No, we can leave it there, and we're ready for your questions. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you both. Members, any questions? Senator Krasner, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. This is a great idea. I'm just wondering why only 700, population of 700,000 or more, because I hear this from business owners here in Northern Nevada too.
Thank you, Senator Krasner. Thank you, Chair. Through you to Senator Krasner, or you want me to go direct?
Please go direct.
Thank you, sir. So, so we wanted to solve it statewide. Our original bill certainly was placed in that direction, but we heard of difficulties through this process. We were approached by the jurisdictions here in Northern Nevada and said that this wasn't something that they could accomplish at this point in time. And so we had to amend the bill. So we'd love to solve it. I know everybody's been working on this. Certainly, and I can understand some of the problems with different softwares and systems lining up, and it's something that we think we can overcome in Clark County, but right now they don't believe they can overcome in Northern Nevada. Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, Senator. Joanna Jacob, for the record, JACOB. I think this, Senator, I believe that the city of Reno and Washoe County and Sparks, they've been working on trying to do some of the preliminary work to align their ordinances. One of the barriers sometimes is trying to, each jurisdiction has their own ordinances and their own governing boards, right? And so a lot of the preliminary work has to be done before we can start looking at aligning this on a regional basis. So I know that some of them may be in the audience and maybe they may want to follow up with you, but this was at the request of the jurisdictions from Northern Nevada. Thank you.
Senator Daly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the presentation. And I understand it's going to be a heavy lift even in just Clark County, significantly different than Northern Nevada, where you have Story County, Douglas County, Carson City, Lyon County, all within a 30, 40-mile radius. So it's much different. So I think trying to get it done in Clark County, where you have that major metropolitan area, the cities and various things, is going to be easier, and maybe you solve a few problems. I don't know. But my question, because it's not as easy as all that, is how it's really going to work, right? So each municipality, let's just use Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, they have their licensing fee. They all have different fees. They're all using that as a revenue stream for their particular issues. So when they if you guys are trying to consolidate this, then it's going to be the revenue sharing. Everyone's going to say, I don't want to lose where I was. So even in like Clark County, how are you going to handle a business that says, all right, I'm going to go in and I'm going to get this Clark County-wide or regional-wide issue, and then if you have a problem where, say, Boulder City says, no, we don't want to play, you still got to get a separate one for that, or they are in, and the business is in North Las Vegas, and they said, I'm never going outside North Las Vegas, I'm never going to Boulder, I don't need a license for Boulder, but you're still charging me a fee on this regional. Have you got an idea on how that's going to work out? I hope you can solve the problem and get it to work fair for everybody, but it's not as simple as it sounds.
Joanna Jacob, for the record, on behalf of Clark County. Senator Daly, you are correct. It is not as simple as it sounds, and that's been one of our struggles throughout the last legislative session. It's something that our Director of Business License and our board, quite frankly, and I know the governing boards of the cities who are behind me, that we've been trying to address. And I think one of the issues is, I think you bring up a good point about Clark County. We have a very large metropolitan area. And it is better for some of our mobile, the ones that we have been able to accomplish are really the people who are traveling, and they might be in Las Vegas and then they're crossing the street and they're in Clark County or they're in Henderson. It's very short distance between our jurisdictions. And so with the way that works, and I know that Mike Cathcart is here from the city of Henderson, who actually is the director of business license for that jurisdiction. So if I misspeak, he can come up and correct me. But what we put into place so far has been a system where it's kind of hosted by the city of Henderson, that we've been working towards a one-stop shop, that if we align our ordinances so that you're regulated in one city versus another city, that the fees could be collected and then distributed through that system. And thank you, Mike, for coming up to the table, because we've been working on this quite a lot. It is, maybe, Mike, if you have anything to say, it's not as simple as Senator Daly said.
For the record, Mike Cathcart, representing the city of Henderson. Thank you for the question, Senator. This started in 2011. We were in state law.
Yep.
We moved forward with contractors, and we spent quite a bit of time putting that program in place. We use a central data store, basically, so we can share information between entities, which is the fee information, the licensing information, and we electronically share that information between the 4 large entities in Clark County every hour. That's one of the reasons we had the amendment to take the fees out, because the fees, to us, the fees could be different for each entity. You're just paying your primary entity when you come in and license. You pay us for which entities you want to be licensed in. You basically check the boxes. I want to be licensed in Henderson, and I want to be licensed in Clark County, and then you pay those fees. We then distribute that information to Clark County, and then we also monthly send them the fees.
Joanna Jacob for the record. I will just follow up. I think one of the issues that we've heard from the businesses that we're trying to address is the time spent in trying to go to each jurisdiction, and the travel time and sitting and trying to navigate individual applications. And so the system that Mike just described, Mr. Cathcart just described, is intended to try and address some of those concerns. And then we can start, because some of the work has been put into place, we can start looking at additional categories that may be suitable for that type of process. Thank you.
And thank you. And I was thinking, I check the box, I want to be in this jurisdiction, that jurisdiction. And everybody has different fees, and each one of those entities is using those fees to pay for the various things that those fees are going for, right? And if you have honest employers who are checking the boxes that they plan on going to versus saying, I'm going to pay the minimum, who pays the least amount, I want that one. And then still working all over the place, I suppose you need to put a big fine in for those guys on however you do your joint ordinance. But I can see how that would work, and some people need to be in all the jurisdictions, some don't need to be in others. So I wish you good luck on this. I know you have a pilot or part of it, what you did, because I was thinking construction contractors, they're everywhere. And they should just get every single one of them and be done. But other people may say, no, it doesn't make any sense because I'm never going to be there. So, I'm going to wish you luck.
Members, any additional questions? Senator Neal, please.
I think Senator Daly took a lot of it on the shared fee structure, but I just want to go back to, you were listing categories, like you mentioned, peer-to-peer, car sharing, and some categories. Like, help me understand that, right? Like, you're listing categories that may go, if a person is licensed, may go to the county, but may or may not go to a city. So that's the first part of the question.
Joanna Jacob for the record. Thank you, Senator Neal, and I am glad to see you back actually today. So I think these are categories that we're looking at because we're looking at people who travel. I think when we originally started this, it was contractors, as Senator Daley noted, that they're driving around, right? And so we're looking at, they may cross into another jurisdiction and we're trying to ease the burden for them. The peer-to-peer car share, this is just an example of some of the categories that we have had to license through the years that we have really been trying, and Mr. Cathcart can correct, I think I can tell you that our directors of business license, including Mr. Cathcart and my director, Vince Chiano, and the other directors within the cities have looked at how we're regulating those new technologies that have been regulated in this building to see if we can align our ordinances. If we can align our ordinances, then we may be able to try and ease the business licensing requirements that we do for them. It may not be suitable. I used it as an example of somebody that we could use, but when we put into the bill that we were looking at how we regulate these types of businesses, time, place, and manner, it could be attorneys, it could be other categories of people who are doing business and traveling around in our jurisdiction that might be more suitable. So time, place, and manner, we renew annually versus biannually. I think there's been a lot of work looking at structurally our ordinances to see if we can align so that we can consider additional categories. So I listed a few, but I don't want that to be taken as these are the only ones. I talked to our director last night and he just received direction from our board to start looking at this, to try and modernize the way we regulate businesses. He mentioned healthcare providers. In our code, we have multiple different types that have been regulated throughout just years and years at the county that we could look at trying streamlining it. And that's really the work that we're trying to do with the bill. I don't know if that answered your question, but I tried. Thank you.
So the second part of the question is, you mentioned Silver Flume or Secretary of State. So I'm trying to understand, right? I mean, clearly there's a new Secretary of State. It's Project Orion, right? They're trying to get a version of what local licensing done, and it's part of their, throughout 2025, they have these benchmarks. So that's duplicative, right? This has been a conversation since, 2013? To talk about multi-jurisdictional licenses, but if they're doing it and then on Silver Flume you have the common portal, which nobody actually likes because it just drives you to the website and you have to do it, but it's not a common. But what they're talking about in Project Orion is actually creating that common place. So how does that work?
Thank you for the question. For the record, Mike Cathcart represents City of Henderson. I really thank you for the question because it lets me talk about the work we've done for the last 18 months. Through Project Orion, Secretary of State's office hired the Gartner Group, which is a consulting firm that came in. They spent a lot of time with us at the local level. They came down to our buildings, they looked at our processes, they looked at our forms, spent time with our management teams and the licensing. And then we have been meeting monthly with them for the remainder of the year, right up until session. The milestones that you see in their plan, we've all been a part of putting those in. So the multi-jurisdictional business license commitment is from the four entities in Southern Nevada. We are moving forward. This bill is a nice complement to that because now we're gonna all put the same ordinance in place that is a scalable ordinance. It's not a one-off ordinance for contractors or for sidewalk vendors or for mobile food vendors. We're gonna have a scalable ordinance in place at all of the entities, and then we are going to start moving down that list that we already talked about. And at some point, there may be the no wrong door approach where you could do that application through Silver Flume and it integrates with us. I'm not saying that's something that's gonna be done tomorrow, but that's an aspiration for all of us that there is more integration in the future. And we felt like the best way we could do that for the local side was start this expansion of the multi-jurisdictional and get our ordinances lined up across the four entities, which we're doing right now for mobile food vendors. Then we would be more ready for that integration in the future.
Chair, just one final. So I know Senator Daley was on the shared fee structure, but the part that I didn't hear, who's collecting for the entities?
Thank you for that question. For the record, Mike Cathcart, representing the City of Henderson. Each entity collects for their primaries right now. So under the system we have set up for contractors, which is one of our largest licensing categories across all 4 entities, you go to your primary jurisdiction to be licensed. So if you're a Henderson-based contractor, your brick and mortar is in Henderson. You come to us either electronically through our website, or you come into our building and do an application. And at that time, you select whether you want to work in one of the other 3 entities, and you pay those fees right there and then. We then transmit that information through the central data store to the other 3 entities. And then once a month, we wire each of the other 3 entities any fees that we collected for them. And we did that through a MOU that we all put together and signed.
How do you handle if a dispute was to come up between the jurisdictions and they felt they didn't get the right amount?
Again, for the record, Mike Cathcart, representing the City of Henderson. I believe in the MOU it had an auditing ability. That has not come up between the 4 entities, but I believe we handled that through the ability of each entity to audit if they wish.
I mean, well, right now you're only doing a limited, right? You're not taking on this group and these categories, which is a lot of categories, where they may have distributed some of their revenue to do something else, right, once they get it. And so, I mean, hey, Godspeed if you're able to pull it off, right? I mean, clearly, this has been an agenda for a long time, but I guess I'm just super curious how you guys are able to pull it off, and then literally we've been having this conversation since 2013, and nobody has been able to pull it off, but yet you're doing it now. So I guess, you know, political will matters.
Well,
Let's leave it there.
Okay. No, I'll leave it.
Okay, yes.
All right, members, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you again for the presentation. And at this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 373. If you could please come forward, Carson City or Las Vegas.
Again, for the record, Mike Cathcart, representing the City of Henderson. I won't take up any more time. City of Henderson supports the bill as amended. Thank you.
And thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Kelly Crompton, representing the City of Las Vegas. We echo the comments of the City of Henderson. We are in support of the amendment. We thank the bill sponsor for taking some of our language to make sure that we continue doing the work that we have been working on for the past few years to get this right. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Great to see you back, Senator Neal. My name is Wesley Harper. I am the Director of Government Affairs for the City of North Las Vegas. We support this bill. This is an effort that we have got a lot of investment in, and this bill only helps to facilitate that success. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. Paul Maratkin with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is also in support of SB 373. We appreciate the efforts here brought forward by the local governments in Southern Nevada to work with Senator Steinbeck on this bill. As you heard, it will help with time efficiencies, cost savings, and we also see this as a small business bill. Many of our small business members do find at times the bureaucracy frustrating and concerning. So we appreciate those efforts, and obviously we understand it's a huge undertaking by local governments, the points that were made by Senator Neal and other committee members and Senator Daly. And so we do appreciate the fact they were able to get a consensus and bring this bill forward, and we look forward to its ultimate passage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in Carson City wishing to join us? Seeing none. And I see nobody coming forward in Las Vegas either. BPS, do we have anybody wishing to speak in support of Senate Bill 373 over the phone?
If you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 373, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hello, my name is Peter Guzman, President of the Latin Chamber of Commerce, where we represent a large amount of small business owners We commend Senator Steinbeck for bringing this bill and working hard on it and working alongside with the Latin Chamber, getting input. We appreciate his efforts, and we are in full support of this bill.
Thank you for joining us. Next caller in support of Senate Bill 373.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brian Walker with the Retail Association of Nevada. We too want to thank the sponsor and the extraordinary effort of our local governments. The Retail Association thinks this is a game changer for our retailers. It supports growth, encourages expansion, and makes it easier for businesses to serve more communities. Our members from family-run shops to large chains see this as a long overdue modernization. It reflects the kind of practical thinking that helps businesses thrive. When retailers spend less time and money navigating bureaucratic processes, those resources can be redirected into the business, hiring staff, improving inventory, and most importantly, lowering prices for our consumers. Lowering operating costs have a direct impact on affordability and accessibility, particularly in competitive markets, and these savings ripple outward, creating a more dynamic retail environment and delivering real value to Nevada families. A more efficient system benefits everyone, businesses, workers, customers, and the communities they serve, and we urge its passage. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next caller in support of Senate
Chair,
Bill
you have no
373.
callers in support at this time.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, you have no more callers in support.
You beat me to it. Thank you. Is there anybody wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 373, either in Carson City or Las Vegas? Seeing none. BPS, do we have anybody wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 373 over the phone?
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. And at this time, no opposition, Las Vegas or Carson City. I saw some movement, just wanted to make sure that they weren't coming forward. They are not. We'll move to the neutral position on Senate Bill 373, Carson City or Las Vegas. Seeing none in the neutral position, we will go to the phone line. BPS, anybody wishing to join us in the neutral position for Senate Bill 373?
Your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Sounds good. Senator Steinbeck, any closing remarks? No closing remarks, and with that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 373. Thank you again for joining us, Senator. Next, I'd like to open up the hearing on Senate Bill 72. Good evening and welcome. Whenever you're ready. Good evening.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair Flores, Vice Chair Orenshall, and members of the Senate Government Affairs Committee. My name is Dan Stewart. I'm a councilman for the City of Henderson, representing Ward 4. Today, I'm pleased to share with you our process in developing the Senate Bill 72 that is before you at this time. My fellow council members and I voted to send two bills drafts to the legislature for consideration in this session. The city is authorized by NRS to submit two BDRs, and we have one in the Assembly and one in the Senate this year. SB 72 modernizes certain sections of the city's charter. As you may know, the city of Henderson is one of several cities in Nevada that has a charter committee. The charter committee is statutorily required to meet in even years and is comprised of 13 members appointed by both the majority and minority in the Nevada Senate and Assembly, as well as members appointed by Henderson City Council. The committee is tasked with meeting every even year to review our city charter and make recommendations for changes that are needed to the city. Make these recommendations to the City Council. 2024, the committee met 3 times and presented their recommendation to my fellow council members on July 2nd, 2024. There is a letter of support from Committee Chair James Martinez in Nellis, if you're interested, for your reference. On August 20th, 2024, the council voted to include the committee's recommendations in one of our bill draft requests to the legislature. Appreciate you listening, and I will now turn the time over to Nicole Rourke, our Government Affairs Director, to walk through the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole Rourke, for the record.
Today, I'm pleased to walk you through SB 72. As you may know, in November 2022, Michelle Romero was elected as the mayor of Henderson, leaving a vacancy in the Ward 1 seat. Under our existing charter, this required the vacancy in Ward 1 to be filled either by an appointment by the city council within 60 days of the vacancy, or a special election to be held within 90 days of the vacancy. The council chose to conduct a special election at that time. Even though the vacancy was anticipated, the limitations of the charter made it difficult to conduct a special election within the 90-day timeframe, and which required the election day to actually be on a Monday, April 3rd, 2023. Based on this experience, the Charter Committee recommended the City Council to amend the charter to make the 90-day period to conduct a special election sequential to the decision of whether to appoint a person to fill the unexpired term. In Section 1 of the bill, you will see that the existing law that authorizes the council to appoint a person within 60 days of the occurrence of the vacancy would remain unchanged. However, if SB 72 is enacted, Section 1 would authorize the council to pass a resolution to conduct a special election within 60 days of the vacancy. This resolution would specify the date of the special election, which would be held not later than 90 days after the passage of that resolution. This would give our city clerk and staff the flexibility to work with the Clark County Elections Department and prepare for a special election. It would also allow council to set the election date, and preferably on a Tuesday, as is common with regular elections. The bill also includes an exemption and requires an appointment should the vacancy occur between the primary until 120 days after the general election. Our municipal elections run concurrently with the statewide election, and this period would be very difficult to run a concurrent special election. Section 2 of the bill slightly modifies the ordinance enactment process for the city charter. Currently, the council is required to send all ordinances to a separate committee meeting for discussion, and that committee is required to send then the ordinance back to the regular meeting of the council. In practice, the City of Henderson has seen the committee process cause confusion among members of the public who are seeking to provide comment on a proposed ordinance. This is because the comment period takes place at the committee meeting, which in practice, actually, we have about 15 minutes before the regular meeting. And so people show up at the wrong time to give their public input, and so we're seeking to make the public input opportunity as part of the regular meeting. Making this committee meeting optional allows the city to move the ordinance process into our regular meeting, and the public will have 2 opportunities to provide input as they do today. Finally, Section 3 of this bill makes changes to the sale of real property in the city's charter. This issue arose as the city began working on a sale of the building known as the Dawson Building on Nevada State University's campus. The city has owned this building and 2 adjacent parcels on the campus since 2005, which Nevada State has been leasing since for over a number of years. And as you approach the city about purchasing the property on a time payment basis, which is the section that we're talking about within the charter, so it's a very narrow application of this. Just to point out that right now the limitation is for unimproved property only, so we've struck that because obviously we have a building on it. Section 3, sub 4 of this bill would remove the limitation by deleting that word. The city owns about 70 properties, and this restriction could affect many of them in a future sale. The charter also includes a provision that the city may only sell the real property for the exact cost of the acquisition, not a penny more, not a penny less. And many of our properties were purchased 20, 30, or 50 plus years ago. So we've removed the limiting language in Section 3, subsection 5. Thank you, Chair Flores. We are ready for questions. We have staff in Las Vegas to assist with that. We have Louis Valdez, our city clerk, Julie Chapman, our elections administrator, and Brian Podmenick, our senior real property analyst. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Members, any questions? We'll start off with Senator Daley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm trying to figure this out. I was just reading part of your charter, and there seems to be many conflicting parts. And I think it's, in my view, interesting that you're saying it has to be the exact price, because the words you're striking out, in any case, the consideration paid must equal the cost of the acquisition to the city. And you're saying that can't be less, can't be more. But if you read the sentence right above that, It says that you can sell sell it to Clark County or any quasi-public nonprofit entity for a nominal consideration whenever the public interest requires such a disposition. So you ignore that language in favor of the sentence below. All of it has to be given meaning. The way I read that last sentence is that it has to be at least equal to what you guys paid for it, not less. So I think this whole thing's got a few problems. I don't know what improved properties you're planning on selling or potentially selling. When you read the first section on that part, it says subject to the provisions of this section and in the applicable provisions of Chapter 268. Seems to me that's how you should lead into all of them, because 268 says you have to get the appraised value and sell it for the appraised value. There's a provision in here that says you can sell it for less than fair market value in some provisions, and I'd have to go back and find it. So it seemed to be all over the place. So cherry picking that one sentence saying that's our problem and we can only sell it for exactly that, I think ignores several other provisions that are in this whole section of your charter. And the whole thing probably needs to be cleaned up.
I'm going to ask Brian Podmenick in Las Vegas to answer that question. He's prepared. He handles our land sales. And so, Brian.
Thank you, Senator Daley. Chairman, Brian Podmenick, BrianPodmenik. It's a good question. Those two sentences do seem to contradict each other, and that's one of the things that we're trying to correct. Whereas the nominal value does not always equal our acquisition costs. And it kind of goes both ways too. And we've got a couple of examples. What we found out from this transaction that we were trying to do with Nevada State University, we had purchased the building for several years ago before they moved in, and we purchased the property, including the building, for around $3 million. So that is our acquisition cost in that property. So if we start looking at a nominal value versus the acquisition cost, they don't necessarily match up with each other. On the flip side of it, as Ms. Rourke mentioned, some of these properties were patented to the city back in the 60s and 70s. And at that point, there was land in the middle of the desert that the city got from the federal government, and the cost to the city was very low. Talking about, in some cases, $60 per acre. So we also run into the acquisition costs being very low. And what we are asking for is to have the city have the ability to negotiate with these, with other government entities and nonprofits for not strictly those numbers, but to actually work on a discounted amount, which may not be the same amount as the nominal value or the acquisition costs.
And I appreciate that. And then I was just trying to look up NRS 374.357, because the very next section in section 6 says the council may sell, lease, or exchange real property for less than its appraised value to any person who maintains or intends to maintain a business within the boundary of the city, which is eligible pursuant to 374, which is abatements, eligible machinery, equipment. So I'm not exactly sure how that fits into this, but it seems to me that all of these things are all over the place. And I know statutory construction, legal construction, judicial review is that you have to give meaning to all of the words in there. You have to read it all together in its entirety and then put it together. You can't come to an absurd conclusion, which I believe is it has to be that exact amount. Can't be more, can't be less. If anyone was looking at that. So maybe the next question is, and maybe the gentleman down south can ask, is So which is controlling? You have NRS, what is it, 268, that says you have to get the appraisal, sometimes two appraisals, you have to sell it for the appraised value, or you're supposed to. I think there's language in there that says you can sell it for less of best interest of the city or whatever. So does that statute control, or does your charter control? Is your charter just eliminate any requirements you have to follow under NRS, under 268 for appraisals? So seems to me, all of this is kind of academic in your charter when the statute says this is how you got to dispose of property over here. So which one?
Brian, please go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. We are trying to comply. We have to comply with both of them, and that's where this issue is causing us problems. We do follow NRS 268 for all of our land sales, in addition to the provisions in our charter. Under 268, it does allow for us to negotiate with nonprofits and with other government entities, well, specifically or other government entities, without complying with the provisions of 268. So for all of our sales where we're selling to private individuals, getting the two appraisals, selling for no less than the fair market value, we do all of that. But then when we are working with other government entities, we do have the ability under the statute to do a less than fair market value sale while the city passes a resolution declaring that it is in the best interest of the city. And we absolutely follow the statutes for 268 in that.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, you follow the statutes in NRS 268, and you may dispose of or sell property at more than the exact cost that you're trying to claim you have to do under this. And I'm just trying to, I understand the language is convoluted and that you got a lot of different things stacked on top of each other. But when I still go back up to section 1, in that part where it says, subject to the provisions of this section and in the applicable provisions of 268 of NRS, the city may lease, sell, exchange property, and I guess that's to the federal government in that particular section. And then when you read further down, it says you can sell it for different, different values. So I'm not sure I'm understanding your saying we have to do it just at this particular price, like you stated in your deal. And some of my other considerations or questions, concerns, and I know I spoke to you earlier about this, and I've seen this happen in the city of Reno. I see the Reno representative out there, but I don't know if it's happened in others, where under NRS 279-500 for a redevelopment agency, it says if that land is given to a developer or sold at less than fair market value, then it triggers an incentive that triggers the application of prevailing wage and various things. So I've seen Reno say, well, we won't do it as the redevelopment agency. We'll go and we'll do it as the city. We'll abandon this street and 10 feet of the roadway, and we'll sell it to this developer for less than fair market value, or we'll just deed it over because we're abandoning this alley. And because the city did it, and not the redevelopment agency. So I just want to make sure those games can't be played either. I don't want to tar you guys with the same bad acting shenanigans that Reno did, and have them deny it if they want to, but they did it. So I just have these concerns. I'm untrustworthy. I mean, I'm untrusting. I'm trustworthy. I'm untrusting.
Nicole Rourke for the record. Senator, thank you for the question. I'm going to go back to the beginning of that question, then I'm going to punt it down to Brian again for your question about the RDA. But so each of those subsections in Section 3 talk about a different type of sale. So I think that's really the point here, is that in subsection 5, it's very specific to nonprofits or other governmental entities. So it's separate and aside from the other provisions of 268 where we would be selling to a business or selling to an individual or what have you. So that's why we want that provision removed from that particular section. And then beyond that, Brian, do you want to provide some assurances?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Brian Podmenick. Yeah, as you mentioned, we do operate under different statutes than the redevelopment agencies. We have not had any deals go that way. In fact, with the city of Henderson, we have sold city property to the redevelopment agency, who is then sold to the developers with those, with those provisions that, yes, they can't sell it at a discount, or if they do, that it would have the, that it would kick in the prevailing wage. So we actually do it the opposite way.
Good. I'm glad that that's the case, and don't get any ideas. Just somebody will be watching down south on that. And I'm just not, I mean, you still have the issue with the nominal consideration above, and then whenever the public interest requires such a disposition, right? So I think there's flexibility there. I'm not saying that you shouldn't get rid of that. I'm just saying there's a lot of questions on the whole structure here that I don't see it being solved by what we're doing with this. And I don't know if we can get it done by Friday, probably not, but we'll have to get it figured out one way or the other. Maybe it's a second house issue.
Senator Neal, please. Oh, I thought you had a question. You had given me the look. You had given me the look, Senator. My apologies.
Senator Daley can continue.
Senator Daley, please continue. All right, I appreciate it. Members, no additional questions? Thank you again, both. I invite you to sit back. And at this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in support to please come forward, either in Carson City or Las Vegas. Support of Senate Bill 72. We'll start here in Carson City. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair. Warren Hardy, representing the Nevada Urban Consortium, wanted to go on and testify in favor of this bill on behalf of our member. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair Flores, member of the committee. For the record, Kelly McNeil, Executive Director of the Nevada League of Cities. The League believes that SB 72's provisions will strengthen the City of Henderson's operations and promote efficient governance. For these reasons, we support SB 72. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair Flores, Vice Chair Orenshaw, members of the committee. My name is Wesley Harper, Director of Government Affairs for the City of North Las Vegas. We work collaboratively with all the jurisdictions in Southern Nevada, and we see this as a good governance bill. This strengthens the City of Henderson, which makes them a stronger partner and strengthens us as well. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Anyone else wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 72? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone?
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 72, Carson City or Las Vegas. Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to testify in opposition over the phone?
Chair, you have no callers at this time.
Great. And lastly, is there anybody wishing to testify in the neutral position for Senate Bill 72, Carson City or Las Vegas? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone in the neutral position for Senate Bill 72?
Your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Perfect. And any closing remarks? They are giving me that we are good to go. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 72. And next, we'll open up our final hearing for this evening, Senate Bill 48. Good evening and welcome. Members, I want to make sure that everybody is working off of the amendment. This is pretty much a gut and replace at this point, so please make sure that you do have a copy of that amendment.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the committee.
Nick Ciccone, for the record, Government Affairs Manager for the City of Reno. As you may be asking, why is the City of Reno presenting the City of Las Vegas's bill? I will let you know that we had been working with them in the interim after they had decided to sponsor this bill, and they were amenable to add some language to their bill as initially proposed to mirror some of the language that they have in Southern Nevada and bring it up north. And that was the intention of their original bill, was to mirror some of the language in Northern Nevada. So we wanted to kind of just copy that theme and make some administrative changes related to the reporting requirements that we send to the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency and mirror some language from the Planning Commissioner appointment process down in Southern Nevada. If you go through the bill, Section 1 changes the reporting timeline and date for the City of Reno, the City of Sparks, and Washoe County. We just want to change it so that we are sending our information from a calendar year. Instead of a calendar year, we're replacing it with fiscal year to align with all of our other data policies, and then change the date that we actually submit that information. Section 2 of this bill allows any county whose population is below 700,000 and cities within that county to adopt an ordinance to make terms of planning commissioners align with the terms of the person that appointed them. This mirrors what is already in statute for Southern Nevada. It's already used by Clark County and the cities within. It's enabling language and does not require anyone to adopt that ordinance. It's up to them. It is also existing practice for our boards like the Charter Committee. Section 3 of this bill allows any county whose population is 700,000 and the cities within them to adopt an ordinance to have a planning commissioner serve at the pleasure or the will of the governing body. This mirrors, again, what is done in Clark County and the cities within. It is how we operate our neighborhood advisory boards, which are also part of the planning process. Section 2 and 3 would become effective upon passage and approval. Section 1 would take an additional year, not until January 1, 2027, just to give us time to adjust to that change. And that is the entirety of the bill.
Thank you. Members, any questions? And I know that you were very diligent in working with all the members prior to the hearing to explain exactly what the bill did. So I appreciate you doing that work. I don't see any questions at this time. I'd like to invite you to sit back. And I'll invite those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 48, Carson City or Las Vegas, to please come forward.
Warren Hardy, representing the Nevada Urban Consortium, here to support our member organization in support of their charter change. Thank you for your consideration.
And thank you for joining us. All support. It's a magical evening.
We did disagree on that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Flores, members of the committee. For the record, Kelly McNeil, Executive Director for the Nevada League of Cities. SB 48 as amended proposes significant enhancements to the planning and zoning framework, empowering local governments to manage growth and development more effectively. For these reasons, the League of Cities supports SB 48. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Carrie Kramer here on behalf of NAP in support of this bill as amended, and we'd like to thank everybody for the changes.
Thank you for joining us. Good evening.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Wesley Harper, Director of Government Affairs for the City of North Las Vegas. We see this as a good governance bill, and we stand with the City of Reno. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. Lindsay Knox, KNOX with McDonald Carano, here on behalf of the Builders Association of Northern Nevada, and ditto.
Thank you for joining us. Anybody else wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 48? Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 48 over the phone?
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. Now I'd like to move to those wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 48, Carson City or Las Vegas. Seeing none, we'll go to the phone line. Those wishing to testify in opposition over the phone to Senate Bill 48.
Chair, you currently have no callers at this time.
Lastly, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in the neutral position to Senate Bill 48 to please come forward, Carson City or Las Vegas. Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone in the neutral position to Senate Bill 48?
Your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any closing remarks? Very wise. We'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 48. And we'll move to the very final item on our agenda, which is public comment. Anybody wishing to join us for public comment in Carson City or Las Vegas? I see a lot of local jurisdictions contemplating public comment. But in the interest of time, they will send an email instead. BPS, do you have anybody wishing to join us over the phone for public comment?
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
All right, thank you, members, and all who joined us today. Thank you again for joining us for this very special session of Government Affairs After Dark. I would like to remind you that we are going to be meeting on Friday at the call of the chair. We intend not to meet at 3:30 p.m. We will very likely be meeting much earlier than that. Please make sure that you're checking your emails and working with your LAs so that we are all here promptly and we can get folk hopefully home as soon as possible. We will have a very voluminous work session document, so please make sure that you pay attention tomorrow, as I want to give everybody a heads up on what we intend to likely work session and give you time to review the amendments along with those documents, as it's been some time since you've read them. Once again, big shout out and thank you to our amazing staff for making this all work and staying so late with us. It is amazing to have our amazing Senator Dina Neal back. So we're super appreciative that you are here and we are happy. That's the way we're going to close it out. A happy note, Senator Neal's back. Let's get it done. All right, with that, this meeting's adjourned.